Hi everyone, and welcome to our next transition talk. An inevitable event that sooner or later all athletes will face is the retirement from sports. A great way to get an idea and get better prepared is by listening to athletes who have gone through this process. My name is Christos Papadimitriou. I'm a professional soccer player in Austria and a transition coach trainee for Athletes All. Our speaker today is an English respected and successful rower, gold medalist in the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing and silver medalist in 2012 in London. He retired from sports after the Olympics in 2012, but his determination to experience something new and out of his comfort zone led him to a different career path later on. Let's welcome Mark Hunter.
Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to get into a detailed discussion, sharing some insight about the highs and lows, the good things, the bad things, and just to try and help other athletes avoid some of the pitfalls. So really looking forward to being part of today's discussion.
Thank you from my side as well for taking the time for this call. And I will just jump in directly to the questions. Would you like to tell us a bit about your athletic career?
Yeah, so as a kid, I loved sport. Sport was a way for me to shine out. I wasn't the A-star academic student at school that got 100% on all these exams. I was a student that just managed to pass everything I needed to. But sport was a way for me to express myself. I got enjoyment and pleasure from. It was a way of interacting with others. And then as a young person, I watched the Olympics at 14. Was literally blown away by the magnitude of the Olympic Games. And I just started this new sport called rowing, or in America, it's called crew. And I just wanted to know what it felt like to go to the Olympics and maybe have the opportunity to stand at the center of the podium, watching my flag being raised high anybody else's, listening to the national anthem and having a gold medal on my neck. So that vision was ingrained very quickly. Just a quick overview of my career. I competed at 2 junior world championships for Great Britain, 3 under-23 world championships, 9 senior world championships, and 3 Olympic Games, each being a different experience. And coming last in Athens, which was quite challenging, quite difficult to deal with, and the challenges I had to deal with when I came back from there. Win the gold medal in Beijing, which is obviously the highlight of an Olympic experience, become an Olympic champion, retiring, then coming back and having a home Olympics, which is something really special. Like, it just blew me away, the magnitude of the home games, and then having the heartbreak of coming second at home games was difficult to deal with. But that was the end of my athletic career, and I retired after the Olympic Games in 2012.
You decided to retire from sports after the Olympics in London in 2012. Was this decision something that you thought about and planned in advance?
Yeah, so I kind of had 2 retirements. Because I'd been through it before. So after Beijing, when I won in Beijing, I decided that I was going to stop. That was going to be my last Olympics. And I'd been really proactive 6 months prior to that, because after my experience in Athens, when we came last and I had nothing planned, the position I found myself, it was so scary. I was frightened. I didn't know what to do. What was I going to do outside of sport? I had nothing planned, and it was not a good place to be, especially when I've come last. Because you're at the low point, you've got nothing in place, and a lot of things bad could have happened at that point. But that support network behind me really helped me kind of get back on my feet. So going into Beijing, I was very clear. I wanted to have a goal of something afterwards that will help me enjoy the games, make the best of it, and then have something else to look forward to post the Olympics. So I had something in place. So after Beijing, I had a job set up at UCLA. So I moved to California 3 weeks after Beijing and started my coaching career at UCLA. And then I came out of retirement and came back to London. And London was different because it was home games and things were going to roll on a lot longer past the games. But this is where I used my network of being a home Olympian, a gold medalist in the games before. I started to use my network and social interaction with sponsors. And I had a job set up for me 6 months post the games as a project manager in London. So I was very proactive, knowing the pitfalls I'd gone through or the struggles post Athens, and wanted to make sure in the next 2 games I had things set up so I could have that fun time. But then I knew that there was something to go on to that I was really looking forward to. So having that goal post the kind of goal of the Olympic Games for me was very important.
Mark, what were your biggest challenges that you came across by deciding to retire?
I think it's tough because being an athlete, you know, for me, it was a dream job. It was a job I loved. My obsession, passion, my drive, understanding the environment. I was fortunate to, you know, to have my sport be my career, you know, up until I retired at 34. So that was, you know, coming out of that environment was very different because you understand that world, your identity, you know, where you fit, you know, your performances, what they relate to. And it's just that kind of the unknown, I guess, of what you're going to go into next. And, you know, trying to make sure that something was in place was a good thing. But also because I retired after the Olympics, was those Olympic blues that you get, you know, a major event, you've kind of, you know, you've dreamt about it for so long, you execute it, it happens, you're on cloud nine, and then bang, collapse. It all disappears very quickly. So yeah, that kind of transition was challenging, but to have something in place, you know, helped that transition.
Did you experience a period of sadness or a low point emotionally during this transition, or was something that you were looking forward to?
Yeah, I think every athlete will experience this differently, depending on what you have in place, what you haven't, your performance, why you've retired, why you're transitioning. For me, it was sadness because I knew it was over. I was going to retire after London, and that was it. I didn't have any more to give. So yeah, and I think it's more when you're on your own. So when you're active and you're around people, you know, I love being around people. I bounce off them and have fun. But when you're isolated on your own and you start thinking about things, that's when those, you know, that kind of little voice in your head, those low points really kind of get magnified. So, you know, that was the challenge there when I was on my own, basically making sure that it didn't dwell on it and become a bigger issue. So yeah, you're going to go for an emotional roller coaster. We're human beings. Like, you can't live on cloud nine every day. You can have good days and bad days, but it's appreciating when things aren't so good. You know, you're able to turn them around and shed some light on some of the good stuff that you did. So it could be watching a video, could be talking to a friend, it could be anything, but just something to brighten up your day. I think is quite important when you are in that kind of blue haze or just that uncertainty.
I think celebrating your career even afterwards, as you said, it's quite well, and it brings some emotions back that are really awesome, you know. And why not to just reflect on these moments again and again and remember them?
Yeah, and you think about all the effort that went into making those moments possible, you know, and the good things, the bad things, and, you know, relationships or friendships you've made or whatever opportunities it's given you. It can make you feel good about yourself again. You know, you did do something quite spectacular, you know, whether it's winning, going to whatever it is, or scoring a winning goal or saving it, whatever it is in your particular sport. It's actually, you know, enjoying those moments. And sometimes they are the feel-good factor that makes you realize that actually, yeah, I was quite good at what I did. I enjoyed it. And this is just part of being a human being, that this is a tough day today, and, you know, I need to get through it.
Absolutely. How long was your transition from sports? Did you have any guidance to help you navigate in this period?
I'm gonna. This is quite interesting because I don't think you ever finish transition out of sport. I think you keep evolving, you keep developing, because it is such a different environment. You'll learn different things. You'll meet different people. You'll have different ideas. How you evolve and how you start to detach away from the athlete you used to be, but it's still there because people will still want to talk about it, or as we talked about, watching videos to kind of make yourself feel better or whatever that may be. But yeah, I've been out of sport 9 years now, and I still don't feel like I've transitioned. So I think it will be an ongoing thing as I keep evolving and working out what is my next thing that I want to be really good at or successful at. So I think it's an ongoing process. I don't think it'll ever stop personally.
Absolutely, I love that. So what do you do now?
So now I work at EY, Ernst Young. So I've been there for 3 years. So I work as a consultant in talent, so doing learning and leadership programs. So it could be talent transformation programs, could be change management, high performing teams, coaching, just various, you know, anything where it's kind of human centric, if you want to call it that, human centered. So it's trying to really help people and develop them, not just their organizations, but the people and the talent they have in them. So, you know, that's kind of the role I do now. So and that's something I've always enjoyed doing. When I think about coaching, when I was a rowing coach, when I was an athlete, was that kind of interaction with other people and helping them develop. It's something I've always enjoyed doing, trying to better them to reach their goals. So that's what I get an opportunity to do every day now at EY. So I feel quite fortunate, and it's a real great environment, good culture to be in. So yeah, that's something I'm really enjoying at the moment.
For me, it's interesting to know, was that something that you always knew you wanted to do, or you found it later along the way?
Yeah, so I definitely didn't know I want to work at EY. It was never on my agenda. It was never an organization I'd ever thought of, because I always looked at it as an accounts firm or auditors. But then when you look inside, like any organization, there's various roles and departments. I actually came in working a different area of the business. So we developed a learning portal to help athletes with what we're talking about today, transition beyond sport. So trying to upskill, equip athletes for that, you know, the what next, by giving them basic skills that most of them would never experience, because not being rude, most athletes come into sport very early, they go on that journey, they never actually go to work. So they've never developed that work-life development or skill set. So trying to upskill them while they're in the comfort zone of being an athlete. So we came in developing that product, but then obviously COVID hit, and in sport, we know this is a nice have, not a must have. Sport does talk a good talk, but whether they deliver on these things, as some of us know, they don't. And with the financial struggles that organization, especially sport, was having, EY realized it wasn't going to be a profitable business. So we got redistributed into the business in other roles. So we kind of still oversee a little bit of that program, but it's not a full-time role or occupation anymore. It's more of an add-on that we would just assist with.
Does your job include working with some athletes?
Yes, so we still work with some different governing bodies and federations. You know, I still personally do some mentoring work with athletes outside of my job, because I want to help them. And obviously what they're going through is quite challenging. You know, is the games going to happen? Isn't it going to happen? Has the last 4 years been a waste of time because it's not going to happen, or is going to and that's just trying to give them some outside perspective on life, because as an athlete, you're in this bubble. It's a really unique bubble. And sometimes you forget there's a lot more going on in the world than you competing or training or racing. So I've really enjoyed that, and it's helped them progress as individuals, which has been great. So that's something that I do personally, because I want to give back. I want to help them. And if they haven't gone to the Olympics before, how do you fast track someone so they understand the pitfalls and the challenges that will come of going to Olympic Games, so they can deliver their best? So that's something that I kind of do outside of work on my own time.
It seems that you had a very tight schedule. What does a typical day for Mark Hunter look like?
Well, my priority in the morning is I've got a 3-year-old and a 12-week-old. So the 3-year-old is up at 6 o'clock every morning. So that's my priority, is to look after her in the morning. She is a bundle of energy, the most competitive little kid I've ever met in my life. I don't know where she gets it from. But it's just it's full of negotiations from 6 in the morning till I drop her off at nursery at 8. And then I come home and I'll start, if I've got time to do exercise, I'll exercise for 45 minutes. If not, it'd be straight into work. Obviously working from home now, so using Teams or Zoom with team calls, team huddles. And then I work you want to say 9 to 5, but it's not, because it's flexible working now, remote working. So it's depending on what we can fit in at certain times. So working all day, and then in the evenings, pick up my little one from nursery, spend 2 hours with her before bed, and then try and get some downtime before we start it all again. So, you know, being a parent is a full-on job, not just working, but also looking after children. But it is, for me, the best job in the world. And I think the best title you get for me is Dad. So I love that. So that's been my favorite name there, is Dad.
So beautiful to hear. I would like to ask you now that during our career, we developed certain skills as athletes. Sometimes we don't even know that we have this kind of skills, and actually that are very important in the corporate world. What transferable skills have you learned in sport that you see you use every day?
Well, I think, you know, even if you're in an individual sport, you're still part of a team, because you'll have a support team, you'll have strength and conditioning coaches, maybe nutritionists, your support network around you. I think that, working the team, is so important. That teamwork, I think it doesn't matter what industry you go into, you're going to have to blend with people in some way, whether it be with your team or with clients to deliver things. So that's an essential skill that I think is bringing it to light or to the forte so you can actually use it. I think that's really important. Communication, I think is fundamental. Like, you need to be able to communicate with people because you might have challenges or questions, and how you articulate them is so important. And also, you think about sport, the emotional intelligence you have with people you work with, because everybody's different, they have their own viewpoint, and how you interact and relate with people, I think is an essential skill when you move into the kind of working environment. As an athlete, you think about handling pressure, using your resilience. I think as you move into the work environment, it's really interesting because when I'm on calls and I hear people talk about pressure, to me, some of the things they talk about as pressure, I'm like, that doesn't even come close to what I would class as pressure. But we each, again, have our own viewpoint of what that is. So it's, it's understanding other people's triggers or challenges and helping them navigate that. That's a real fundamental thing you learn in sport. And, taking responsibility. I think, if you're going to put your hand up to do something, whether you can deliver it or not, but taking responsibility for the outcome, I think, is really important. And as an athlete, especially my sport, there was nowhere to hide. So that becomes a fundamental thing that you use, is that you want to deliver on what you said you were going to achieve or the output you were going to give. And then being adaptable, being adaptable to change. Athletes are doing it right now with COVID. This is a great thing that they can take beyond sport, of how they've dealt with the challenges, as we all have. And then I think a big thing that we don't do in the work environment is thinking about our recovery. And as an athlete, you're all about recovery because you want to perform the following day. So I think taking some of that attribute or skill into the work environment is really important, because you don't want to burn out or be exhausted so you can't deliver. And if you think about it as an athlete, you have your waves of training or performance, and then you kind of taper for certain things. And I think it's just, using that when you work in a work environment with a team or with different colleagues, I think is a real useful tip to take with you, because most people won't even think about it. So the recovery side, when you're in the office or in a team, I think it's really important at work.
Absolutely. I love that. Even though you retired in 2012, did you still consider yourself as an athlete?
I do not class myself as an athlete. I see myself as I'm kind of in transition. I'm still in transition. I mentioned it earlier. But one thing that is tough is that when I get to talk about what it was like as an athlete, to me, it feels like a different person, a different life, because it was so long ago. I get a smile at the things that I achieved. There was lots of heartbreak on the way and disappointment, but that's all that learning experience that you can take with you. If you're just successful the whole time, how much do you really learn? When the way you evaluate things is by trying to get better and improve. And normally those setbacks are the ones that really kind of help you define and shape that. So, I wouldn't class myself as an athlete anymore. Definitely not. I'm a transitioning person.
Are you still practicing as much as you did in the past?
No, definitely not. God, when I think about the training we used to do, because my particular sport, it was probably 99% of training and 1% competing. High volume program, not many days off. It was pretty brutal. And I couldn't even imagine trying to do one day of what I used to do now. For me, I exercise, I don't train. I exercise now just for my mental health more than anything. I understand, I've learned that how uptight I can get if I don't exercise and have that release. So for me, it's really important that every other day, it doesn't have to be every day, I get to do something where it's just, I can go and, exercise where it's kind of hurting myself, not like physically by pushing myself, or just having that downtime where I go for a cycle or kind of run machine or go for a walk or run, whatever it is. Just that time to just escape basically and just switch off is so important for me now.
Absolutely. You touched earlier on the athletic identity, and we often see that athletes have formed their identity around their sports. When the athletic identity is taken from them either by their own decision or by external factors, it can happen that they reach a point where they no longer know who they are. Having now made this transition from rowing to life after sports, what advice would you give to an athlete who's preparing for the end of their careers?
I think, you got to, have pride in your past, what you've done. You've got to have pride in that because you've committed to something, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever it is, having pride in that, but then trying to be ambitious for the what next. So the way I kind of thought about it was that, what are my kind of, personal fears, when I leave sport, what am I going to be when I'm not an athlete? What is my identity away from this? So, maybe write things down like, what is my, personal fears and my hopes, just get things down. And then what are my professional hopes and fears? So you get some context of where your mind is, and then maybe write down like what you'd like to do outside of sport. You might want to be a coach. You might want to work in media. You want to work in marketing. It could still be attached to sport in some way, or is it something completely different? Do you want to challenge yourself in a different light? So trying to work out who you are away from sport, I think is quite important. But I think just writing things down because, my experience being an athlete, I used to have so many things muddling around in my head. I never would always write them down. And just to get things down, then you can, that's what I'm thinking. Why am I thinking that? And then you can start to analyze, how do you make these things become, reality, or the ones that you need to kind of be aware of. And then trying to put some structure to it, I think is quite a useful tool to do, of just having things in front of you. And then, what is the legacy you want to leave in sport, but what do you want people to say to you when you leave, about you when you leave? But also, how do you want to create your legacy in your next walk of life? What does that look like? And then maybe kind of working out what is leadership? What is your leadership philosophy, or what do you want it to be as you go forward? So they're just some fundamental things I would think about putting in place or writing down just to work out. And also, you might learn something about yourself that you didn't realize. And I think that's always important. What more can I learn?
You mentioned the tool to teach athletes about the workplace environment. Can you tell us a bit about what athletes don't know about the business world? What do they need to learn?
Well, we kind of touched on that athletes have these amazing skill sets, but it's being able to bring them out in a different walk of life. And I think that is the challenge. And it depends what environment you want to go into. I think understanding that, I think that context is quite important. And then, how do you start putting things in place for that transition to understand what it would be in that business world? And for me, it was interacting with my sponsors, basically. So getting them to know who I was as a person rather than Mark the athlete, because then they'll invest time in you to help you, understand that working world or business environment. And that's how I did a lot of my learning. It wasn't from reading books or doing courses. It was meeting people, chatting with them, having coffees with them, observing them, making sure that when I met one person, they introduced me to someone else. So you start to create your own viewpoint of what that is. And then some areas you may have interest in. So I don't think there's one way fits all. I think it's trying to find out what works for you is really important. But for me, it was using the network I had and how to expand that to help me have a viewpoint of the business world.
Makes absolutely sense. Now we have closed 1 year since the coming of the pandemic. Was the corona a taste of what athletes should be expecting when they retire?
I think the world is in a place of uncertainty. Now, as an athlete, when you're going to retire, you're in that kind of uncertainty. What do I do next? But the whole world is kind of there with you right now. So take that as that's a good thing. You're not alone. And there's a lot of talk about, skill set development, rather than having experience in a role or jobs and that sort of thing. So how do you develop your skill set to help you progress? I think it's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough. It's never easy. But I think being very proactive as early as possible. And being proactive is you doing something yourself and making things happen or reaching out to people. And that's, for me, is a problem with sport, is that you kind of pampered so much now that you don't become as proactive as you could be. And sometimes you get lost. But trying to engage that idea of being proactive and reaching out to people, trying to put things in place before you get to that point, because you're in a really secure bubble right now. In sport, you have that breathing space. You may be getting paid, or you have a contract, or whatever it is, you don't want to leave it till you come out of that environment where you're kind of isolated, the phone stops ringing, emails stop coming, and then trying to do it, because it becomes really hard. And it doesn't have to be you're going to spend days on this. It could be you spend half hour every week to start with, or every day, then it becomes an hour, and it just slowly incremental gains of how you're going to spend time on it. Because, you know, as an athlete, you didn't just get to the top or the position you're in overnight. It took time, dedication. And why shouldn't this, you know, understanding of how COVID's going to impact make you more aware of what you need to start thinking about post your athletic career?
Something that helped me was in the beginning, of course, I saw it as a challenge. Then I said, I have been playing soccer for 20 years. Why not to take this time and do all the things that I wanted to do, but I never had the time?
And I think that's you being proactive, though, using that time. And I think a question I like asking clients at the moment is, what does lockdown and COVID give you the chance to do that you never could, as you just explained? It doesn't have to be, you know, find a job or studying. It could be spending more time with my family, more time with my kids, whatever it is. But it's allowed you a step back, because we're all running at 100 miles an hour when you think about it with work and our lives. This has given us a chance to reflect on things. You know, what are the things that are really important to us as individuals, and what do we want to actually maximize this time for? And I think it's made people reflect in a different way than they ever had done before. And I just think the more proactive athletes can be and engage and think about what do I want to do next, and how do I put those things in place to make that happen, I think this is a golden time to do that, because everybody's in that kind of reflection place right now.
And it's also a very good way just to expose yourself and create some other identity besides the athletic that you already have.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be refreshing as well. Like if you're just totally focused on sport, and if I think back to being a young athlete, my whole mindset was about, I'm a rower, this is my job, this is who I am. I didn't really think about anything else. There was no plan B when I was younger. And that's typical of a young athlete, because you think it's going to go on forever. But as you get older, you know that's not the case. And I think that the earlier you can engage this sort of mindset of thinking about what do I do, and having something else can really support your development as an athlete when you're younger, because you have a different focus point. It helps your cognitive development. So when you come on the field of play or in competition, the way you think under pressure, you can respond more quickly or more efficiently. There's all these things that are benefits that you don't really appreciate, because you're just totally fixed on being the best you can at your sport. But having that release mechanism, I think is a valuable asset. And it depends what it is for you. It can be different for every person. It doesn't have to be studying. It could be some part-time work. It could be coaching. It could be mentoring. It could be whatever it is. But having something else is really important to help your development away from that identity as an athlete.
I love these advices. Imagine waking up tomorrow and having the opportunity to go back in time. More specifically, when you decided to retire from your professional career. The only difference is that you have the mind, the experience, and the moments you have gone through until today. What advice would you give to the younger Mark Hunter?
Definitely plan B earlier, you know, having something else to focus on. Because I remember when I went to Athens and came last, I was 26, so you'd say that probably isn't young. And the fear I had when I came home and I realized I'd come last, I had nothing, I had no money, I had nothing. And I just felt like everything had been a waste of time. And I had nothing to show for it apart from a bag full of kit from the Olympic Games. That was it. If I'd have had a plan B, maybe it'd have put me in a best position when I came back, that I'd have had something else to focus on, rather than my whole world being wrapped up in that performance. And then that totally destroying me for the next 6 months. Fall into a severe depression, all those sort of things that we didn't really talk about back then, but now we can actually talk about them. So I think it's really important for your health, basically, to have something else to focus on, because you're going to have highs and lows in sport. It's not always going to be great, but how do you kind of switch off and think about something else and have some interaction with something else? I think it's really important. So that would be an advice I would give myself. Think about something else other than just the sport you're doing. You know, be really proactive in whatever it may be, for having something. And I think another thing as well is when I retired after winning in Beijing, I think I've been an athlete for like 10 years and it was my livelihood, my job. You forget why you started and the fun element of sport. When you started, that first time you picked up a ball, Christos, or I picked up an oar, that excitement you had of doing something for the first time, you know, I love it. I love it. Sometimes you forget that when you become a professional athlete, it becomes your livelihood and your job, and you forget the fundamental reason why you started. So I think I've played that back to myself. And I was quite fortunate when I came out of retirement, I got to say to myself, these next 3 years for London, enjoy every moment, because this is going to be it. You're not going to get to do these camps again or these competitions. This is the last one you'll do. And I kind of, every place I went to where it'd be the last, I kind of said goodbye to it. It was really weird. I said goodbye to it because I don't think it'd be the last one. But I think understanding the reason you got into it and the fun element, I think is really important. That's something I would definitely say to myself, that don't get so wrapped up in it that it can destroy you when it doesn't go right.
Coming slowly to the end, I would like to ask you, if any of our listeners wanted to contact you, where could they find you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter, Instagram as Mark Hunter GB, as in Mark Hunter, Great Britain. I'm on LinkedIn, Mark Hunter GB at gmail.com. So, I'm just another athlete that's been through this transition, or as I said, I'm still going through that transition. And I'm just happy to share insight, learnings I've had, pitfalls, challenges. And like all of us that have kind of been through it, we just want to help the next cohort so they can kind of springboard into the what next, rather than kind of stuttering and kind of having that cliff edge trauma that a lot of athletes face when they stop, not knowing what to do next because they don't have a goal and a focus. And there is a community of athletes who just want to help each other. So do get in touch, more than happy to chat. Can't say I'm going to have all the answers, but I'll do my best.
Awesome. I loved it. Thank you so much for taking the time and share your knowledge from your own experience. I'm very sure that your story would resonate with and inspire many of us. For those who would like to find more information about Mark and Athlete Soul, feel free to visit our website. And we encourage you to reach out if you need any further assistance. Thank you, Mark, once again.
No, thanks very much. I really enjoyed it and some great questions. Thank you.